Hey, welcome to Testimony Tuesday. I'm here with Daniel Weeks. Daniel is a church member, and he is married to Morgan, and they have two daughters, Elizabeth and Joanna. And so we want to hear Daniel's testimony today. So, Daniel, tell us about life growing up for you. Where was that? How did it go?
Well, life for me was, I've been telling people I'm from LA, but the lower Alabama version, the version with the proper accents. I'm from the Mobile area, kind of in the boondocks between Mobile, Alabama, and Lucedale, Mississippi. Parents were both in education. My mom was a speech pathologist in the schools, and my dad was a high school PE teacher, health teacher, and coach. We grew up in church. They sent my brother and eventually my sister when she came along many years later, and myself all to a private Christian school. Really grew up in the faith. We ate dinner together pretty much every night and asked a blessing, and we always said our prayers and ate our vegetables and all the other things Hulk Hogan told us to do. But it was good.
So at what age did you realize you needed Christ as your Savior?
That's one of those that's honestly kind of hard for me to pinpoint. I think that one of the more, I guess, somewhat meaningful moments to me was I was actually about 6 years old, and we had a new pastor at our church, and I was there at the sanctuary with my parents, and they were doing the Lord's Supper, and they said, only those who have accepted Christ their Savior, who have followed Him in believers' baptism, were asked to partake. And at that point, I'd not had any serious profession of faith. I'd not been baptized, and I didn't like this not getting to participate. And so it wound up being a long conversation with my parents and eventually with the pastor later. And essentially just went down all the highlights of the faith, all of the hallmarks that denote someone as a Christian. And I guess at that point I had I suppose a sufficient understanding of those things to make everyone go, yeah, all right.
Yeah, sometimes people get confused and think salvation only happens when you walk an aisle of a church or say a special prayer. But it's really in your heart recognizing your need for Christ and understanding that need and what that looks like. And so, yeah. So how was as you grew up, how did your faith play a part of your life? Was it I know it was significant for you in college, but how was it before college? And then, even making decisions like coming to Glasgow, Kentucky from LA. I mean, that's a big change.
So growing up, I was always involved in, like I mentioned, in the church. I was part of the youth group. I wound up being pretty involved in that, taking leadership roles. At school, I was one of the officers in our Fellowship of Christian Athletes group. Asked to give devotionals with that periodically. There were a couple of us that were the leaders of that pretty much led a study with our baseball team. And I don't know. I guess I always tried to make it a part of, or I guess it was always an important part of who I was. But I tried to I guess use it as a fundamental part of how I made choices, and it's really informed my outlook in a lot of ways. I do remember first going off to college, going off to Troy University for undergrad. A good friend from Mobile and I were going to room together, and at the last minute he shifted gears and said he was going to go somewhere else. And I'm going, well, shoot, who am I going to be living with? And summer, I do remember, and I know this is a little thing and it might sound silly, but I remember praying that I got a good roommate, that wouldn't be having to share a room with somebody who was off, partying till all hours of the morning and getting in the way of my trying to study. Yes, I was a bit of a nerd at the time, but it's worked out okay. But I got there. Had a good fella from Enterprise that I wound up rooming with, and still in contact, and it worked out well.
Good. So so Troy, the Trojans, you moved to Glasgow and Barron County. We're still the Trojans, but was it at Troy that you met Morgan?
It was. We actually met in a psychology class.
Were you the patient or just taking the class?
Yes. Now, so we were both taking the class. I guess I was a junior and she was a freshman, and she likes telling the story that she came in and just recognized me as one of the people that she'd seen at the Baptist Campus Ministries and randomly on campus. Just sat down next to me and said, "Hi, I'm Morgan, and we're going to study together."
And I know Morgan well enough to know that's probably how that worked out. So, all right. So you go to Troy and you become a doctor or studying pre-med, and I don't know. And then so how does the thought process go into play with you and Morgan once you get married to come to Glasgow?
Well, so it was actually a really long process. So at that point, I actually used this in my application, my personal statement for residencies. I wrote that I pretty much lead it off by saying that since the time I was 8 years old, I knew I wanted to become a lawyer. And when I went off to Troy, that's what I thought I was going to do. I had an aunt and uncle who were both in the law. It always interested me. I grew up watching Matlock with my dad and mom when it got late, and seemed like a good route to go. And I was actually an English major, and there near the end, I decided I didn't want to go that route. Really didn't know what I wanted to do. I actually went into counseling, did that for a couple of years. In the meantime, was I was just always my senior year of college was odd because it was a sudden shift in I guess in focus in my mission and what I was going to do, because I'd always had this singular focus of this is the plan: go to college, major in something, go to law school, and things will fall into place. But then all of a sudden I realized I don't want to be a lawyer. And my whole prayer was just, Lord, open the right doors, and let me do something of value with this time while I'm figuring it all out. And I got a master's in counseling, and in that time, I guess it was actually in April of my senior year, just at the last minute, I got asked to come help with a Disciple Now with a couple churches down in Brantley, Alabama. 3 of the churches, 2 Baptist churches and a Methodist church, were all teaming up to put on a big event for all the youth in the town. And went there and really hit it off with the group, and wound up getting asked to come on board and help out as the youth leader. And at the time, I thought it was going to be about a 2-year deal. It ended up being a 5-year deal. While I realized I wanted to go to med school and knocked out prereqs and followed that path.
So that's interesting. God has, the path that God's put you on, to have a counseling degree, and then be involved in ministry because your heart was already there, and now then leads you to the medical field. And so you got your prereqs done. And then is that at that step, did you come to Glasgow to do your residency at TJ?
Well, I guess after all the prereqs, went to medical school at UAB. They're in Birmingham. 2 years of didactics there, and then 3rd and 4th year clinical rotations in Huntsville. So we've kind of been, Morgan and I got married right before, at the end of 1st year of med school. And since that time, we've kind of been stair-stepping our way north about 2 hours at a time. And when it came time for residency, at the time, we were initially thinking that we'd probably end up staying in Huntsville, but we ended up interviewing up here. I liked the people, really hit it off with Doctors House and Wright and Fisher. I remember having a great talk with Dr. House about firearms, and Dr. Fisher and I wound up talking about John Locke and the nature of rights, and it was a great conversation with everyone, and just I met a lot of down to earth folks, and it was very reminiscent of Troy, and it was just a very familiar setting, and I brought Morgan back up one weekend for us to take a look around, and she had the same thought. It feels a lot like Troy, and since that time, everything fell into place. It was our first choice for residency. We got it. And came up here, found a house, good neighborhood, good neighbors. Got involved with a church because this bald fella from across the road comes over, and he and his wife bring some cookies and say, "Hey, we got a Glasgow Baptist. Love for y'all to come join us."
Yeah, you were just the bald guy brought cookies but didn't volunteer to help unload the truck.
I had a couple buddies there already, so we were getting it done pretty well at that point.
Yeah. Well, so at Glasgow Baptist, I'm obviously your neighbor, and we've enjoyed friendship, and I've enjoyed. I can tell you, my son has enjoyed you and leading student ministry and being a part of that during his time. Drew's comes home talking about that, and obviously I can see just in our conversations how God has used you, and I'm tickled to death for you and Morgan, and just the parents that you are to Elizabeth and Joanna, and watching you interact with them. And so I want to say a special thank you for doing our Testimony Tuesday and sharing your testimony. Now, last couple questions I have. The first and the most important question is, Roll Tide or War Eagle?
No, we are definitely War Eagle people in our house.
Okay, and we've got some, we got some folks both ways in the church, but more War Eagle than Roll Tide, and we just have to know that. Second thing is, obviously with coronavirus, and you're TJ, any encouraging words you can say to our folks who are watching to help them in this time?
Oh, absolutely. And first, thanks for having me. I was a little surprised to get asked, but enjoyed it. And one of the things just regarding testimonies to begin with, I'm always, I guess, a little hesitant about mine sometimes, because I don't have the exciting massive turnaround story that some people do. And one of the things I've come to really appreciate about it over time is just the simple fact that the more I've seen, the more people I've met, the more I've interacted with, either as a counselor or in the medical field. And Morgan, she's gone back to work as a counselor. She's in the mental health field, and just the stories that we hear from people. She has a similar story that as myself. We both grew up in churches, and we see some of the things people go through, and having that foundation from the beginning, we see some of the things that we've been spared.
Yeah.
And it makes us that much more thankful for it. And it's a work in progress with the little ones. And Elizabeth at this point is 4 and has more energy than any 2 kids should have. But we're working on it, and she enjoys getting to go to church, and pretty much just about every day she's going is tomorrow a church day. So it's been good. It's been good all around. So we've appreciated what everyone has done with her already. Sure. Regarding all the craziness with the coronavirus right now, the thing I keep trying to remind everybody of when they watch the news is just the nature of math. We were a little slow on the uptake, getting all the testing rolled out. There were some issues early on. I wish that we had everything lined up, that once we had that first case show up in Seattle, that we could have really hit it hard and been testing thousands of people a day. But we weren't there, but we are now. Now we're I think the goal is by the end of this week to be testing 75,000 people a day here in the U.S. I mean, it's across the country, but the more people we test, the more positives we're going to find. We're going to find a lot more people. The requirements for testing are going to be relaxed more. We're going to be able to test people who have less severe symptoms, who might not have direct contact with someone who has been to Wuhan, China, or been to South Korea, Japan, Italy, what have you. Or they might not have been in direct contact with someone with a known positive test. We're going to find a lot more people who have it, and as such, the number of cases is going to increase dramatically. I would encourage folks, don't be too scared by that. Certainly don't panic because of it. At this point, the social distancing recommendations are still in place. For those with kids, do your best to enjoy it. Try not to tase any of them. But especially the younger ones, they're not going to remember the details of why they weren't going to school. They're going to remember that they were home with their parents and spent a lot of time with them, and might have gotten to spend time that they wouldn't have otherwise. I think there's a good chance that younger kids are going to look back on this and say, yeah, that was one of the greatest summers of my life. Yeah. For those who are able to get out and go, try to reach out to those who can't. For the older folks who especially those with any kind of comorbid condition, be it any underlying COPD or pulmonary fibrosis, heart disease, etc. Y'all are the ones that are at greater risk. If there is someone who's young that's able to volunteer some time and go shopping for folks who need to stay better sequestered, let's use the time that we have to try to help out those around us. I saw a great line the other day that right now the church isn't closed. It needs to be closed.
Yep. And those are some of the things we have been announcing and are working on. We've got people who call us every day who say, hey, I'll go to the grocery or I'll pick up somebody's medicine. And so if you're watching this today and you fall in those categories of needing help and don't need to be out, don't hesitate to call a church, because we have people who are willing to do that. As Daniel said, church isn't closed. We're open, and we're being the church and trying to be the church. And so, Daniel, thanks for what you do at TJ, what you do at the church. And hey, if you look right behind you, that light on in that upper window there is my house, and I'm in there talking to my neighbor Daniel across the street. Hey, thanks for watching us on Testimony Tuesday. We look forward to seeing you next week as we bring you another testimony. God bless.